Have you ever seen negative 7 squared and parenthesis negative 7 close parenthesis squared and wondered why one gives you a negative number and the other gives you a positive number? It looks like the same, but it's not. First, what does squaring mean? When you square a number, you multiply it by itself. For example, 5 squared means 5 times 5. 3 square means 3 times 3. Simple, right? Squaring usually makes numbers bigger and it usually makes them positive because positive times a positive gives you a positive, and a negative times a negative also gives you a positive. Now, here's where things get interesting. When you see a negative sign, the question is the negative included inside a square or not? It all depends on parentheses. If the negative is inside the parentheses, like this example, it means the whole number including the negative gets squared. If there are no parentheses like negative 7 squared, then only the 7 is being squared, not the negative. The negative stays outside. Look at the number inside a parenthesis. The parenthesis tells us to square the entire negative 7. So, negative 7 times negative 7. Now look at negative 7 squared. There are no parentheses. This means the square happens first. First you square the 7 times 7, then the negative is just sitting outside. So after you square, you slap in the negative. So for parentheses, you will get a positive number. And for the one without the parentheses, you will get a negative number. Let's practice a few really quick. Negative 5 squared. This one will be in parentheses. And negative 5 without parentheses squared. Let's go ahead and solve the first problem. Let's multiply negative 5 two times, including the negative sign. So negative 5 times negative 5 will be a positive 25. All right, let's go ahead and leave the negative outside. So we will multiply 5 times 5. So 5 times 5 is 25, but don't forget the negative sign, negative 25. All right, go ahead and try solving these by yourself and let me know if you got the answers and if you didn't get confused, because I bet you kinda got confused. So the first problem, as you see, there are no parentheses, so we will leave the negative outside. 3 times 3, that will be 9. Don't forget your negative sign, negative 9. The next problem, we have parentheses, so we will include a parenthesis when multiplying. So that will be negative 3 times negative 3. So a negative times a negative gives you a positive 9. Now, did you get the answers? Let me know down in the comments. So, the following problem, negative 3 squared in parentheses and negative 4 squared in parentheses. But look at the first one. The square is inside the parentheses. So, what are you going to do? Let's go ahead and leave the negative outside because as you see that negative is outside, and let's go ahead and multiply 3 times 3, which is inside the parentheses, so that will be negative 9. Now let's bring down the positive sign, so let's go ahead and multiply negative 4 and negative 4. So a negative times a negative gives you 16, positive 16, and let's minus, that will give you positive 7. Now try solving this one by yourself and let me know if you can get the right answer. So we have a negative 2 in parentheses squared and 5 squared. So let's go ahead and include the negative. We square the number negative 2 times negative 2 and we will leave the minus sign outside for the 5 squared. So negative times a negative gives you positive 4 and 25. Don't forget the minus sign. Final answer negative 21. Now pause the video and try solving this problem by yourself. We have a 6 squared inside a parenthesis and we have a negative 5 inside a parenthesis squared. Alright, so we will first leave the negative aside. 6 times 6 plus and negative 5 times negative 5. So 6 times 6 is 36. Don't forget a negative sign plus negative times a negative, positive 25. Negative 36 plus 25 is negative 11. Now go ahead and try solving this problem. Negative 7 squared plus negative 3 parentheses squared negative 2 squared. Alright, so the first step, look at the negative 7 squared. No parentheses, so we will exclude the negative sign. Negative 3 times negative 3, and we will exclude the negative sign 2 times 2. Now let's go ahead and multiply 7 times 7, that's 49. Don't forget a negative. Positive times a positive, that's positive 9, and 2 times 2 is 4. Let's go ahead and solve negative 49 plus 9. Negative 49 plus 9, we will subtract, and we will be left with negative 40 minus 4, and will be equal to negative 44. Alright, now pause the video and try to solve this problem by yourself. And at the end, let's compare our answers and see if we get the same answers. Alright, so the first thing, look at it negative. Be careful with the negatives. That's negative, but it's negative 8 times negative 8 squared. And that 2 with negative 2 is included, so we'll double that. And let's go ahead and solve negative 8 times negative 8. That is 64, but don't forget the negative sign. Plus, and now negative times a negative, positive 4. Minus negative 64 plus 4 will give you negative 60. Now, this is the ultimate problem. If you can solve it, you're not one of those people that always get this wrong. So, the first thing we need to do is work within the brackets, the negative 2 squared. So, as you know, that it's included. So, negative 2 times negative 2. Now, be careful. We have a negative outside. So, let's keep that negative outside and let's put the positive 4 inside. And now, 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. Now, let's move on. Let's bring down the sign and let's look at this one. Negative 4 and squared. So as you see, the negative 4 is within the brackets and the square is outside. So negative 4 times negative 4. The negative is included. That is positive 16. Let's bring down the minus sign. And now look at this one. Everything is in brackets, but look at the 2. You have to be careful with the square because it's not outside the brackets. It's inside with the negative 5. So that means that the negative is not included. So that will be 5 times 5 will be 25, but it will be negative, right? So 5 times 5, 25, the minus sign, which is not included, negative 25. Now let's add 4 plus 5. The negative sign outside, 4 plus 5 is 13. Let's bring down the positive 16. Now look over here, we have a 1 in front of that negative. So negative times a negative will give you positive 25. And now let's remove the brackets, guys. There's nothing else to do within the brackets. And let's take the negative sign and put it closer to 13. Now, negative 13 plus 16 is 3 plus 25. Now, 3 plus 25 is 28. Now, did you get 28? If you did, well, you will never ever get confused with numbers like this, and it means you understood this kind of problems. So, let me know down in the comments.